Hi guys, Tim Walden, and on behalf of Beverly and myself, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. And please take the time to subscribe and share it with others in the photographic field that are friends of yours. We would love to have them along with us on this journey. Today what I'm going to do is a little look inside an image, and we're going to look inside this particular image, a black and white of a young couple, kind of in a relationship style, and not all relationship portraits that we do have young kids in them. Sometimes, there's more than the babies and the toddlers. And we want to be able to do something that's impactful, meaningful, storytelling, dramatic, all of those things without having those young children in it, because we want to be a little more diverse in what we offer with our black and white style than just children, although that does dominate what we do, there's no doubt about it. So what I thought I would do, this was actually created during a little segment I was doing, a video segment I was doing for some content and some teaching. And so what I thought I would do is pull a nugget from that, pull something that I thought was just packed full of our thought process as I'm creating this particular image, and share it with you, those of us following us on our YouTube channel. So for this particular image, before I take you into that video, I thought I'd show you a real quick lighting diagram of what it took to do that. Now, let me first, as I look at this image, a couple of things come to mind. One is, of course, with a lot of our relationship style work, we're making one subject prominent and we're making another subject more secondary, more of a supporting role. And one of the ways that we do that is through things like moving them out of the flow of light. As you can see, the young man here is out of the flow of light. He's actually posed out of the flow of light. And when you pose them out of the flow of light, what happens is you naturally get more drama to your key subject. And that helps, because when I think about a beautiful relationship portrait or a portrait of this style, what I think about is when I walk into a room with a very low lights on, and this is hanging on the wall, what do I see immediately? I mean, your eyes should go immediately to your subject, your key subject, the story that you're telling. Everything else should be there, but it should be there in more of a secondary role. Now, you want to make sure that as you create art like this, that for beautiful black and whites, you have to know that you establish a black. In other words, she's got almost black hair, almost totally black hair. She's wearing a black top. He's wearing a deep gray, which helps give us a little separation. But we want to make sure that we've got all that subtle detail, that nothing is minus detail, but it gradually gets deeper as we get away from where we want the viewer to look. Remember, if you create a beautiful black and white relationship portrait, I like to think of being able to go behind the viewer of that portrait, and it's almost like I take the back of their head and I say, look at this. This is what I want you to see. And so I turn their head. Lighting should do that for us. Posing and lighting and all of those type of things. And as you think about lighting, realize too, lighting is not just where you put the lights or how you balance them, but it's how you marry it to the pose. That's every bit as important, because with him leaning and turning away from the key light source, then what happens is he gets into a very secondary light. He gets out of the flow of light. He goes into shadow. And folks, I think in this industry, we get afraid of highlight and shadow. And we end up with a lot of just flat pancake kind of mediocrity in our photography, because we're not steering the viewer where we want to steer them. So our gentleman here is out of the flow of light. She's in the flow of light. And not being sarcastic, just being honest here, one of the problems too with lighting, when you set lighting like this up, is not that you don't balance it properly. It's people just don't move the light. I mean, I know that sounds just overly simplified, but it's a lot of times the beautiful lighting is simply taking the light where you need it to be and not being afraid to do that. A lot of times we cover ourselves so much, and we do that by saying, well, I don't want to get those shadows too heavy. Well, then manage them with reflectors and manage them with all the other, or with fill lights or whatever it might be. But we've got to think a little more dramatically, because the way we separate ourselves as high-end professionals is that we go where the masses can't, that our work looks different than theirs does. So I could go on and on, but we've got beautiful, rich blacks. We got a great dynamic range here. We have a primary subject, we have a secondary subject that adds emotion to the image. And I'm going to show you the lighting, then I'm going to take you into a couple of minutes, about 2.5 minutes actually, from this particular session. So here's the lighting. It's real simple, 2 light, 2 reflector setup. I'm using a large Profoto 50-inch parabolic style umbrella, white, deep umbrella, I guess you'd call it. I love those because you can push that light in and out. You can shape the light just a little bit more. And then I've got a layer of soft frost over the front of that umbrella. So it gives me very much of a north light, window light kind of feel. I love the light. And then if you want to have more management with it, you can actually push your light up into that umbrella a little bit more and just use a smaller section of it. And then you can actually feather it a little bit easier and so forth, because that light's not filling that umbrella up, so the outer edges of it become like a bit of a gobo and allow you to feather your lights even greater. That's not the case here. I used all of it, but it can be if you want it to be. So I meter my key light, and that becomes my exposure. I've got my separator light mounted to the ceiling behind them. It's about 1.5 stops weaker than my key light. I'm using a kicker light, a kicker reflector, which is a very smooth metallic reflector you'll see in the video, just kicking a little light back. And I'll be honest with you, if you look at the image, I don't know that you can see it on the video, but right around her chin, right down in here, right in the jawline, I'm getting just a little bead of separation. Now, if it were him in that position, you'd probably see more of it, because her hair, being so dark, is minimizing that effect. It's not eliminating it, but it's minimizing it. But that reflector still can kick some light back and give you a little bead of light along the shoulder and the hair. But granted, it's going to be very minuscule because it's reflecting the light back. It's definitely going to be at a weaker degree, and then the texture and the density of hair and clothing is going to minimize it. But yet I keep it there because even the slightest bit of it is important. And you can see the separator light along his hair and her hair, his shoulder, things along those lines. So that's what the separator light's doing. And then I have a fill reflector brought in on managing the shadows. Whenever time you hear the word fill, you need to think invisible. The word fill means invisible. So when you're using a fill light, a fill reflector, to me, I think, okay, this item is for management. It's not to be noticed. Thus, it should have an invisible quality. It actually, not invisible like you're not seeing the result of it. It's just that it's not standing on its own 2 feet. It's almost, it's such a management tool, you don't even realize it unless you were to pull it out and then lose that shadow detail. It goes too much contrast, too black, too little detail, then you'd know it. So when I say fill, think invisible, not invisible like it's not doing anything, but invisible like it's not playing a key characteristic. It's a management tool. And so that's a crushed silver reflector. I've angled it to gradate down, so the shadows gradate down from the mask of the face and then get darker as you go back. And so with that said, I want to just invite you to hang on and let's go into about a 2.5 minute video and find out how we created this particular image. I really love, I just go back to my roots of really tight compositions and beautiful dramatic lighting, really meaningful portraits. So I'm going to do something again kind of featuring Grace and Carter, just in a more secondary role, and I'm going to work like from right up here on the composition. So I'm going to just leave you where you are, Grace, I think. Actually, turn your body a little bit more this direction. Now, just your face that way. Generally, you want, especially, I could get away with it with the black and it wouldn't be that big a deal, but for the sake of movement, generally turn the body the opposite way you're going to turn the head. That automatically gives movement and flow to the image. It gets real stagnant if Grace faces one way and her face goes that same way. There's just no movement at all to it. So I've turned her away knowing that I'm going to turn her face toward this light. What I want you to do is get behind her and put your hands just on her waist. And what I want you to do is lean, a long way. Now remember, the camera's like a sponge. So people feel like they're leaning too far, but they're not. It's because the camera absorbs movement. So again, like a sponge, we have to overemphasize the movement to get it back to the aesthetics and the beauty and the drama that we want it to have. I'm only working in here, so I'm not worried about your hands. The only reason I'm concerned, actually pull them up just a little bit. The only reason I'd at all be concerned with her hands is what it does with the shoulders. So if she drops her hands to her side, then the arms go straight up and down. I don't want that. So turn your face toward the light for me. So I'm going to start by lighting Grace's face. We're going to use a short light on her face, kind of a loop light. Turn your face a little more. I think too, can you kind of lean over just a little bit? Not toward him, but just toward this. There you go. I'm getting a diagonal line on your shoulder. Turn your face. I want you looking at her, Carter. You got an easy job. That's right. Beautiful.